Fast, cheap, good. Choose two. This saying is one all too familiar for those in the theatrical community, and it's one I heard over and over again in the educational setting. Fast, cheap, and good are the qualities that are constantly holding us back in our productions and to our production value. These are the things that keep us from being able to achieve the quality designs or are in the way of achieving the designs that we want every time. You can't have fast, cheap, and good. So let's talk about how we can control these settings in order to make them something that we have in our toolbox to deal with rather than obstacles that we need to overcome. So first, let's talk fast. Fast is the timeline. When were you brought onto this production? How long do you have between now and tech? And what is the timeline for everyone else? Have you been on the same schedule as all the other designers, or are you being brought in late in the process? Because if you're all on the same page, that's different than if you're on your own and you're new to the game. So the timeline is something that you as a designer really can't control. That's in the director and the production manager's hands, as are most of these. But what you can control is your time management skills. So when you're on a fast timeline, you need to be sure that you're managing your time wisely, not procrastinating, and using it to the best of your ability to make what you can happen, happen. The second one, cheap. Also, not in your control. You do not get to decide the budget, and if you do, well, more power to you. I would love to be in that situation, but I have never been. Now, I've dealt with budgets that range from $50 to $3,000. Granted, I know that a lot of theaters have budgets that are smaller than that or a lot larger than that. That's just the budgets I've dealt with. And I think that those are vastly different in and of themselves. So the budget is something you really have to be careful with. You have to know what you can afford and what you can't, and be willing to make sacrifices. You also have to know if you're going to have access to free labor, which if you do, good on you. I'm glad you have friends and family that are so supportive and passionate about your art form, but most of the time you're going to have to pay for that, and you need to budget that in. If it is not already, like the staff is there or something, if you work for a university, that's a little bit different. But that's going to be a part of your budget. So you need to make sure that when you design that I don't ever limit my designs based on my budget. I try to make my designs as amazing as I can on their own and then figure out how to budget around them. But you're going to have to be willing to make sacrifices in your designs based off of your budget. And you're going to need to acknowledge the budget that you have rather than ignore it. So learning how to work within your budgetary restraints is what's really going to help you. The third one is, we did fast, cheap, good. Good. Okay, so good is the quality of your product. Now, good is such a subjective term that I'm not going to say that if you did it fast and cheap, your costumes are terrible. What I mean by good is how true are they to your design and how true are they to the intent you had when you became a part of the production. Do they live up to the standards that you hold for yourself? Are they fulfilling for you artistically? And do they serve the show in the way that you had initially intended? Is this a costumed or designed show? I'm speaking for all designers. I'm just a costume designer, so I tend to speak more to costumes, but know that this is about design in general. Do these designs fulfill you and really make you proud, or are you just glad to have them up there and be done with it and probably won't even show them in your portfolio? That's what I mean by good. How quality are they? Are they your best work, your worst work, or just meh work? So those are the defining factors of what is holding us back in theater, and this is how we can achieve the greatness when we have just two of them, because you really have to choose two. So, and I say you have to choose two. You don't have to choose two. Obviously, if you're working in an amazing environment or have a ton of money, a ton of time, a ton of money and a ton of time, then you can have a ton of talent. You will have amazing products, but I personally, speaking from someone who has mostly dealt with storefront, university, community theaters, you don't have that same kind of professionalism and availability of funds and time. So I'm speaking to those people right now. I'm not speaking about Broadway designers or designers at really high-end regional theaters. I'm speaking to more storefront, community, university level theaters. Smaller theaters, smaller budgets, smaller time frames. So if you're in that category, then your options are you can have a fast and cheap design, you can have a cheap and good design, or you can have a good and fast design. So let's start with fast and cheap. Fast, let's say you were brought into the production 2 weeks before tech. That's a pretty steep thing. If you're brought in 2 weeks before tech, I really hope that you didn't agree to like do Shakespeare or some crazy period piece, because God bless you, you are going to have a really hard time with this. Fast and cheap, you need to be doing hopefully a modern show, or a show that you can deal with modern wear in, because you're going to be doing a lot of shopping. And you have to be willing to compromise on what your quality is. If you need fast and cheap, I honestly wouldn't even render. I would come up with some mood boards, some really strong ideas of what you could be looking for, but then just go out there and see what you can find. Go to TJ Maxx, go to Ross, go to Walmart and Target and Styles for Less and whatever other throwaway fashion stores you have in your area. Side note, I am typically one to advocate for sustainable fashion choices and buying with the intention of having good quality garments, but in this situation, that is not the case. You just need clothes on bodies that fulfill some kind of design choice. So what I do in fast and cheap scenarios is I go to the stores that I just listed. I buy anything and everything that I can, ignoring the budget at first, but keeping all my receipts, keeping all the tags on everything, going to Plato's Closet, going to other thrift stores in the area. I would usually stay away from Goodwill and like places like Value Village at this point, because you don't have enough time to really dig through there in order to find something. Yes, those are great places to find hidden jewels, but I use those more when I have time, because it does take a while to get through there and actually find something that's usable. So I would stay away from bigger Goodwill shops and just shop resale shops like Plato's Closet and Blackbird Trading Company and Buffalo Exchange. Those are the places that I would go to look for clothes at a cheaper price. Keep all of that, keep all your receipts, know the return policies, take everything with you to fittings and have actors try anything and everything on. Be sure to take lots of pictures. That way in your production meetings, you can give the director or the production manager tons of options to look through, choose the looks you need, and make sure that you have written down the budget that it's going to cost for those looks. That way you can use your money wisely. Yeah, that's pretty much everything for fast and cheap, I think. You just really have to know how to budget and be willing to put in the effort to go to stores, because you're really not going to be able to build in a short time frame. You can try and you can build small pieces that are easy to make, but I wouldn't attempt to build anything big or have any kind of crazy obnoxious builds, especially if it's just you and you don't have a team and you don't have the budget to get other people to work. Now, if you do have friends and family that can help you out, then that is wonderful and more power to you, but you aren't always going to have that kind of support system. So that is my plan for dealing with fast and cheap. Next is cheap and good. This is my personal favorite. I would much rather have a long time to work on things than have a large budget and no time. If I have a long time, that gives me a lot more ability to create a character. It gives me the opportunity to discover who this character is through the clothing, to figure out my designs and how they align with the actor's realizations of the character, and to make different choices and experiment with my designs. It gives me time to really think about them. So I prefer to have a 6-month lead on any project. I know ideally you would want 6 months to a year for every project, but I've had times that have ranged from 6 months to 3 weeks to actually 1 week. So you never know what's going to happen, and you really have to be prepared for everything. But ideally, I prefer to have a long period of time before I have to produce a show. If you have a long amount of time, that also gives you the ability to build on your own. If you don't have a budget large enough to hire out labor, it gives you the opportunities to shop sales, to go to Goodwill, to find coupons, to wait through seasons so that you can get clothes that maybe might be out of season instead of having to order them online. If you use your time wisely, you won't ever have to pay expedited shipping. It gives you the opportunity to really utilize your budget to its fullest extent, even though it may be a smaller budget. It gives you the opportunity to really think things through instead of having to rush through and make choices every second. You have the availability in your time to think everything and make your choices fully. Because every choice you make is a choice whether or not you make it. If you decide not to put buttons on it because you didn't think about buttons on the skirt, you still made the choice not to do that. If you made a choice not to embellish something, not to add a trim, then even though that's a minor detail, that's still a choice that you made subconsciously. And I'd rather be able to think those things through and think, how can I enhance this costume during a dress rehearsal, rather than how can I just get this costume on someone. So that's my 2 cents. That's my favorite of the two. Everyone works different. So yeah, the third one is good and fast. Good and fast means that you are designing something. When I've worked good and fast, I have had a design concept before. I usually don't fully render. I've done like some quick sketches and had some good ideas, but haven't been able to completely bring those to the fullest fruition that I wanted. They still ended up on stage. I was still proud of my work. Good and fast means that you do have a larger budget. So you can have grand ideas, and if you aren't able to execute them yourselves with builds, you can pay expedited shipping. You can go to specialty stores. You can pay big sums of money to get exactly what you want. And that's the key there, is that if you're on a fast time schedule and you want your costumes to be good, you want them to be of the quality you are expecting, you want them to match your design and to really exceed your intent and fulfill you artistically, you're going to need the budget to pay for that, because you can't build an entire show on a 2-3 week time frame. Yeah, that's fast and good. So those are your 3 options, and I think I've pretty well explained why you can't have all 3. Like I said, you can have all 3 if you're like in a big opera house or on Broadway or in a huge regional theater, but even then things happen that you can't control. Hurricanes hit. Yeah, life is crazy. You just have to be prepared for everything. So this is my way of telling you how I deal with those issues, and hopefully this gives you some tools to use in your next design and will help you to communicate better with your director and production manager on how you can achieve the greatest designs for the show within your constrictions. Hopefully this will help you be able to explain why maybe you can't deliver on a design that they had wanted because you're working fast and cheap, or because you're working good and fast, or because it's cheap and good. So yes, that is it. If you have any other ways of handling these, or you want to Let me know about a scenario when you had to work in this situation and how that ended up. I would love to hear it. I have lots of stories I'd be willing to share if you just want to talk to me about that. So that is my video for this week. And next week, I'm not sure what I'm talking about. I was thinking about either talking about how to properly thrift or how to wear vintage clothes. So if you want to let me know in the comments below which one of those videos you'd be most interested for next week, I would be happy to hear from you. Also, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Caitlin Manfrey Designs and see what I'm up to. I post daily. I will also be showing you guys a new logo in the coming month, so be on the lookout for that. I'm very excited to share that with you. I hope y'all have a wonderful Sunday and a great rest of your week, and I will see you a week from today. Bye!